Hello, and welcome to the UFO Radio Show. I'm your host, the station manager. Whether you're into UFOs, consciousness, the paranormal, or if you just want to wind down, kick back with a drink, and ponder some interesting stories, you're in the right place. We come to you from the misty hills above the world-famous Loch Ness, deep in the heart of the Scottish Highlands. Please hit like and subscribe if you enjoy the broadcast. Now here's what we have for you on this episode of the UFO Radio Show. Stand by. In this episode, we examine the extraordinary experience of Mario Woods. On November 18, 1977, 23-year-old security police officer Mario Woods was stationed at Ellsworth Airforce Base in South Dakota. His base of operations was November Flight Launch Control Center near Newell. At about 9 p.m., Sergeant Woods was outside the security building having a cigarette break and casually surveying the landscape. He had been on duty for about 3 hours now and had another 9 to go. He didn't get any sleep before his night shift started, but he felt good. It was about 10 degrees out, Fahrenheit, minus 12 Celsius, cold anyway. There were patches of snow on the ground, classic South Dakota winter. Glancing to his right, Mario noticed a bright light at about his 3 o'clock position. It sat some 30 degrees off the horizon. It was bright white, but not glaring. It reminded him of a kind of mini-moon. He thought it could well be landing lights from some B-52 bombers. They flew out of Ellsworth and would often perform low-level training over the prairie. It looked like they were in tight formation and headed his way from miles and miles out, because the light didn't seem like it was getting closer. Maybe helicopters? Mario got an idea, stubbed out his cigarette, and jogged back into November Control. Flight Control Officer Bill Holloman was a nice guy. Did his job well. As part of his oversight of the LF operations, Bill's desk was in front of the lighting and comms panel. He was on a personal call to his wife, so was barely listening to Mario, who bounded in gabbling. Woods asked Bill if he could flick the entrance lights on and off as an impromptu signal to an aircrew with some landing lights he just saw to the east. Bill gestured in a way that said, "Whatever. Shut up, do what you want." He slid forward so Mario could reach the light switch. Off, on, off, on, off, on. Mario jogged back outside. His temporary partner, Michael Johnson, watched Woods darting back and forth from his position by the television. He hadn't met Mario before. This was his very first shift filling in for Woods' regular partner, who was on leave. Johnson shook his head and rolled his eyes. This Woods character could end up being hard work. Mario stopped a few feet outside of the doors of the ready room and looked to the east. The light hadn't moved. It didn't seem to have changed at all. He watched hopefully. After a few moments, the mystery light went out, came on, went out, came on, went out, came on. Mario thought this was cool. They must have seen a signal. He had seen pilots give wing waves or helicopter pilots rock their aircraft a bit, as a casual acknowledgement or a cheeky hello, but this was really cool. There was no way Mario was going to let it go at that. He jogged back inside and said to his new partner, "Hey man, you gotta come and see this." Johnson wasn't interested. "Whatever man," he said, but Mario wouldn't let it go and quickly cajoled Johnson to go outside. Out in the cold air, Woods pointed out the light to his temporary partner. It was still in the same spot. He explained that he had flashed the exterior lights off and on, and the distant light flashed the same pattern back. Johnson gave Mario the look and an eye roll. Yup, hard work, he thought to himself. Mario told him to wait, and he ran back inside again. Woods flicked the lights on and off 3 times and dashed outside. He and Johnson watched for a few minutes. The distant light turned off and on and off and on, but only twice this time. Again, Michael Johnson was unmoved. Woods tried once more. This time, the two men watched the mystery light simply turn off. After 30 seconds, it re-illuminated, but further around to the men's left. Mario now insisted, "So, what do you think it is?" True to form, Michael Johnson offered his go-to answer. "I don't know, whatever, man." Johnson went back inside. On his own now, Mario thought it was worth one last try. This time, there was no replay. Mario stepped outside and looked for the mystery light, but it appeared to have moved on. Woods and Johnson sat watching TV until the local channel shut down for the day's broadcasting. It was midnight. About 15 minutes later, the alert phone started ringing. The alert phone was a direct line from the missile launch officers in the live control capsule, set deep in the bedrock beneath the men's feet. Bill Holloman picked up the phone and was all business. The launch officers received an alarm on their panel. Situation 4 at launch facility, November 5. A SIT-4 means the outer area antenna which aids with the broadcast and reception of telemetry information, and the underground portion of the facility containing support resources like power management, hydraulics, ventilation, etc., had both been alarmed. Although a serious alarm, it was by no means a unique event, and both the security men had handled this kind of situation before. Johnson and Woods grabbed their heavy winter parkas, cold weather gear, and their ditty bags. They were given their code tables, weapons, and ammo by the flight security officer, and a safety briefing from the launch control crew in the underground capsule. Launch Facility November 5 was the closest missile silo to their present location at the Launch Control Center. It was approximately 10 miles away by road, 5 miles as the crow flies. They should be there in about 15 minutes. The men loaded into their F-150 pickup patrol vehicle and left the LCF and headed toward November 5 via Highway 79. Woods was in the passenger seat. As they drove along the hard-packed and groomed clay roads nearing the highway, Woods looked off into the distance to his right and could see that a bright, pulsating object was very near the missile site, still some 7 or 8 miles away. They drove up onto Highway 79, and from its raised roadway, the glow in the direction of November 5 was even more obvious. Woods turned to Johnson and said, "Look, Michael, that light is over November 5. Johnson gave his usual exasperated response. "No way. Whatever, man." Mario noticed that despite his confident words, Johnson's face didn't seem to get the memo. He looked worried. As they approached the outskirts of the town of Newell, they made a right turn onto a gravel road that led to November 5. Then they rounded that final left-hand bend, and both men were suddenly in direct line of sight of November 5. It was less than 100 feet in front of them. Hovering directly over the fenced-in site, only 15 feet above the missile blast door itself, was a pulsating, reddish-orange sphere. It looked as if it were made of just light, but was also somehow solid. Mario relates the scale of the pulsating, hovering, silent sphere to the size of a Walmart store. It was enormous. Its surface was shimmering with red and orange colors, constantly swirling and churning, almost like footage you might see of the sun's surface. Johnson stopped the truck some 50 to 60 feet shy of the gate to November 5. As soon as the truck stopped moving, the two men were hit with an intense white light. It made Mario wince and recoil. He felt the light was so bright he could see the veins in his eyelids with his eyes closed. He was having trouble breathing. The air had become dense and he wasn't able to inhale properly. He looked over at Johnson. His hands were on the steering wheel and he stared blankly ahead, but he also seemed to be gasping for air. Mario grabbed his 3-cell flashlight, and in desperate need to breathe, he rolled his window down. He pulled himself out of his seat and stuck his torso out the window. He sat on the window frame and shone his flashlight at the intensely glowing sphere. He flashed it on and off. He found himself repeating in his mind that he needed relief, to breathe, that they both needed relief. The suffocating pressure suddenly seemed to fade. Able to breathe easily again, Mario slid back into his seat. He placed his hand on the barrel of his M16. It started to seem as if everything was in slow motion. Dust particles in the cab sparkled like glitter. The intense light seemed to envelop and hold Mario. Then there was this smell. Stinging, organic, and familiar. Really strong. Strong ammonia. Now, without warning and within a split second, Mario watched as a beach ball-sized black sphere appeared from the direction of the larger craft. It seemed to transition from the speed of a bullet to motionless instantly, and just a few inches from the surface of the truck. It changed position in this manner a couple dozen times. The sphere had incised longitudinal lines running from one pole to the other. It was always very close to the vehicle, but never touched it. After many of these staccato flybys, the sphere shot upward and out of Wood's sight. Michael Johnson still had hold of the steering wheel and still stared forward. Mario's confusion and curiosity gave way to increasing fear as he rolled his window up. Then a thought came to him. Well, more than a thought. It was an idea. A sure thing. An insistence. It filled his mind and coursed through him like a hissing whisper.
Do not fear.
Mario felt like he might pass out at any moment. He experienced tunnel vision, and sound was becoming strange. He knew how to breathe to increase his blood pressure like pilots do in high-G maneuvers, so as not to black out, so he tried this.
Do not fear.
Mario detected some movement to his right. He turned to watch 4 figures emerge from the shadows and approach his window. In front, there were 3 small beings. They all looked identical to each other. Approximately 3.5 feet tall, with short, thin arms and legs, large heads, and large black eyes. Their skin was a light teal gray. The being on the left had what looked like a wand or rod under its belt. The tip of this wand glowed with a yellow light. Mario clung to consciousness. Directly behind the 3 smaller beings was a taller figure. It had the same skin tone as the smaller beings. Mario got the clear impression that this being was in charge. Its skin-tight gray clothing matched the smaller figures. The leader stood a good foot taller than the other 3 and had some kind of device on his chest that emitted a yellow glow. Before he blacked out,
Mario realized that the beings weren't actually walking across the frozen ground. They were gliding. Do not fear.
Sergeant Mario Woods snapped his head up. He looked straight ahead. Through the windscreen of the pickup truck, all he could see was blackness. His rifle barrel was still in his hand. He moved his head around, but there was nothing to see. Where's the light? The giant sphere? November 5. He called out, Michael! Michael! Where are we? Where's November 5? No response from Sergeant Johnson. Mario checked his breathing and pulse. All fine. He shoved his shoulder hard and even stuck his finger in his ear. Not a single reaction. His hand still felt clamped onto the steering wheel. Mario popped his door open and stepped outside. He was now standing in mud. It's below freezing, and he's standing in mud. And where is November 5? It has its own power. It should be all lit up. They're supposed to be investigating the alarms and locking down the site. To Mario's immediate right was a concrete wall. It rose up some 50 feet into the air and extended far in front and behind the truck. On the driver's side of the truck was inky blackness. Where the hell were they? Why were they here?
WSC, November 1, what's your location?
The truck's radio blared out.
WSC, November 1, what's your location?
Wing Security Command was looking for them. Mario hopped back into the cab. Michael, you gonna get that? He hoped the sound of the radio and some orders would bring Johnson around, but no luck. Mario picked up the handset. Senior Airman Woods, WSC, I don't know where we are. Sergeant Woods was asked if they needed recovery or medical help. He explained Michael Johnson's state, and he had no idea of their location or what had happened. While he waited for instructions, Mario stood outside the truck again. He looked at the sky. It seemed like the sun was coming up, but that's not right. He checked his watch. Just gone 6 a.m. But they had only just left for November 5 at 12:15. It shouldn't be any later than 1 a.m. Where did 5 hours go? Now the wall. Mario thought he knew what this might be. This looked like the wall of a dam or reservoir. Back on the radio again, Woods was told to check in with WCF every 5 minutes, and Security Command will triangulate their location. There were multiple patrols searching for them, including sheriff's deputies and state troopers, and he was to stand by for recovery. 30 minutes later, a patrol vehicle showed up. The officer walked up to Mario, who said, "Hey, Sergeant Garza, what the heck is going on?" The older officer told Mario that he was just there to escort the two men back to base. He couldn't talk to Mario about anything but that. Garza and Woods tried once again to bring Johnson back to his senses, but couldn't. The two men unbuckled the catatonic officer's seatbelt eventually prized his fingers from the wheel and slid him into the passenger seat and secured him there, still staring straight ahead. Mario drove the pickup truck out from behind what he now knew to be the wall of a dam, with Sergeant Garza following close behind. He noticed that there were no tire tracks in the snow that covered the roadway in front of him. He had also noticed that there were no tire tracks behind their pickup truck until Sergeant Garza arrived. The open space on the driver's side of the truck was actually a deep holding pond just below the level of the roadway, and on the passenger side was that 50-foot high dam wall. How the hell did the two men get to that spot in the mud in a two-wheel drive pickup truck without leaving tire tracks? When they returned to November Flight Launch Control, Michael Johnson was taken away for a full medical evaluation, and Mario didn't see him again for some time. Woods was questioned as you might expect. It turns out that Johnson and Woods had been found behind the Newell Lake Dam. Newell Lake was 7.5 miles from the November 5 site. Mario could not explain how they got there, nor what had occurred in the 5 missing hours. After a prolonged debriefing, he was given a moment to collect himself. He headed to the toilet block. It was here that he had another strange occurrence. Mario's ears began to ring, and his vision changed. The ringing noise was loud, and everything looked profoundly green to him. He began to get the sensation that his consciousness was leaving his body through his feet. The descending sensation continued, and he was convinced that if he gave into it, he would have left his body entirely. Luckily, a guard came in to check on him, and this snapped him out of his momentary reverie. Mario was then taken to Ellsworth Field to have a debriefing with the base wing commander. In the wing commander's office were other Air Force officers and a couple of men in suits. Woods assumed these men were from some form of intelligence agency. Once again, Mario told his full story and answered questions. The others listened, and Mario was eventually released to have a full medical examination. During this medical exam, the base doctor took skin samples from Mario's hand and forehead. He hadn't seen himself in the mirror, but apparently Mario had what looked to be flash burns on his head and hand. Matters eventually settled down a bit, and Mario got on with his duties. 2 weeks had gone by when Sergeant Johnson unexpectedly knocked at the door of Mario's apartment. The two men finally had the opportunity to discuss the entire experience. As it turned out, Johnson had clear memory of the full experience that Mario recalled. The sphere, the light, the black beach ball, the dam, what Mario said to him, even the finger in his ear. He simply couldn't move at the time. The two men took out some pencils and paper and made sketches of their recollections. They both agreed they saw the same things and had the same experiences. Exactly. Johnson said to Mario that during the incident, he heard many voices telling him in his head, "Do not fear." Mario was staggered to hear this. It was what he too had experienced. Johnson continued. It turns out he wasn't in the vehicle when he heard those voices. He said he was lying down somewhere else. He claimed he saw Mario's cold weather mittens on the floor, right next to where he was lying down while he was hearing those voices. Woods was staggered by this. It meant that Michael had been there with him, no longer in the vehicle. Mario hadn't even thought about his mittens since the night he packed them for the drive to November 5. He ran to get his ditty bag, which was in the other room. It turns out, his mittens were missing. His blood ran cold. He couldn't explain why he wouldn't have noticed them as missing until now. Mario had also discovered something else after the event. On his inside upper left arm, and above his left ankle, he discovered what looked to be small scars on his skin he couldn't explain. They are identical, perfectly round 5mm depressions with a raised dimple in the center. Woods has no recollection of ever having had any treatment that could possibly result in these scars. Mario's doctor also could not offer any explanation as to a medical condition, device, or procedure that would result in scars like he had. After a few weeks, Mario Woods was removed from duty at November Control and reassigned to Kilo Control near Sturgis. He was still technically at Ellsworth, but many miles from November LF. He continued hearing stories about other flights seeing things near the launch facilities. They were told never to speak with anyone about any of this, so Mario kept quiet, as ordered. Stories about sightings were all over the missile complexes, even reports of cattle mutilations. Mario claims to have once seen 2 mutilated cows while traveling to Kilo 1. Later that year, Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind was released in movie theaters. Mario was floored by the scene where Richard Dreyfuss's character looks out the window of his parked truck and sees a row of mailboxes shaking violently. A UFO hovering above him then directs a beam of light onto his vehicle, giving him a sunburn across the side of his face that had been exposed to it. This freaked Mario out, and he had to leave the theater. This kind of flashback, along with the series of dreams he had been having, quietly kept him on edge. Sergeant Johnson was transferred somewhere else a month or so after the incident. Mario has tried to reconnect with Michael Johnson, but has not been able to find him to this day. November 5 was the closest launch site to the flight's control facility where Mario was based. Why did the craft they encountered choose to set off alarms at November 5? Being the closest site to the security base, they must have realized people would be sent to investigate, and that they would arrive quickly. Mario recalled flashing the floodlights at the distant mystery light. Did he personally get the attention of the craft's occupants? Was his and Johnson's trip to November 5 exactly what the craft wanted to achieve? Contact? Since his encounter, Mario's interest in the phenomenon has increased. He has felt compelled to study and research the history and purposes of the Egyptian pyramids. He has continued looking for his fellow experiencer, Michael Johnson. Mario holds lectures and speaks at meetings and on podcasts about UAP. He has testified at Arrow and has given interviews with investigators. Mario has a history of unusual encounters. He had seen a group of 3 flying saucers in broad daylight as a 6-year-old child. He was on his way to school and was with his mother and sister. They and dozens of other witnesses watched these objects hover over a church in their town until the discs shot straight up in the sky. Since his experience at November 5, Mario has undergone 2 hypno-regression procedures in an attempt to recall more details and hidden memories of his encounter, especially the 4 to 5 missing hours. I'm not going to go into the results of those regression procedures. I think it will be rewarding for you to hear them from Mario himself. You can find links to outstanding interviews with him in the description below. Mario Woods has one of the most compelling stories in all of UFO history. He is a smart, articulate, stand-up guy, and you will be wiser and better informed for listening to him. And that's all we have time for on this episode of the UFO Radio Show. Please like and subscribe, it really does help the algorithm, and we look forward to speaking to you again